Gitamritam Maha. All the Upanishads are like a cow. The cowherd boy is Krishna. Arjuna is a calf. People of purified intellect are the drinkers of the milk, and the milk is the supreme nectar called the Bhagavad-Gita. Chapter 6, verse 30. What happens after realization? We had a few people asking, now what? What happens after realization? Well, today we are going to discuss what happens after realization. The 30th verse is, one who sees me in everything and sees all things in me, I do not go out of his vision, and he also is not lost to my vision, to my sight. Yo mam pashyati sarvatra sarvam cha mai pashyati tasyaham na pranashyami sacha me na pranashyati. As we have been seeing, the person who comes to this realization sees all beings in the Atman and the Atman in all beings. At this point, as we know, say, the person becomes the universe. Right now, we have the idea of me separate from the universe, and the universe as separate from God. At this point, what happens is, you see everything as one. So this is what happens. Yo mam pashyati, one who sees me, realizes me. How do I see? Through yoga. Because this chapter is on yoga, yoga of meditation. So one who sees me, God. Sri Krishna is identifying himself with God, as God. And Sarvatra sarvam cha mai pashyati, and he who sees me in all things. What happens is, for him tasya aham, to him I am not lost. As they say, what do you mean lost? We'll explain this. And he is not lost to me. I am not lost to him. He is not lost to me. It's lost. Pranashyati, to be destroyed. The idea of separateness has been destroyed, and the idea of unity has arisen. So here, when the Lord says, one who sees me through yoga, sees me everywhere and everything in me. That vision is never taken away from him or her. It doesn't matter there. So what happens is, there is a continuous, constant permanent form of realization that happens. There is no kind of, at times I will see him in the morning, and in the afternoon I might not see him in the night. We are not talking about visions. We are not talking about an individual, either God or the person, the yogi. We're talking about the universal. So the realization is constant. So what happens after realization? There is a constant, you can say, experience of God in everything and oneself in God. As we say, the whole universe is in the Atman, and the Atman is in everything. And God is that Atman. There is knowledge is of two types. Spiritual knowledge I'm talking about. One is the indirect knowledge. When you come to a stage of yoga and realization, yes, I and God, we have these two things. And then we have a higher state of knowledge where God is my very own, my very soul, my very Atman, my very being. This is the state of, can say, knowledge. And what is this knowledge? It is a special kind of knowledge which is called Vijnana. What happens after realization is this. It's a special knowledge. We will see what Sri Ramakrishna says about the state of Vijnana, the special knowledge. This person has a special knowledge of God. The person interacts with God as the universe. Right now we are interacting with the universe on the most grossest level. And that's the reason why we do not know the reality behind this universe and the reality behind me. As a vision, as a perceptions through yoga becomes super fine, we will see the reality behind this universe and the reality behind my soul. And then the culmination comes, that which is there out, tat, and that which is here in tvam, tat tvam asi, thou art that. That is the final word the Upanishad says when one realizes this. So Swami Vivekananda uses the word, the one has become the many, and the many has become the one, is situated in the one. So the one and the many and the one is the same reality. So this yogi sees everything, sarvam, all created things, whatever is a perceptible thing, is seen by the yogi in its essential nature. What happens is we are endowed with what you call as limiting adjuncts. These are adventitious things. We have ourselves, that's an abstract form of us. We know us. But that abstract form has become concrete through limiting adjuncts. It's called upadhis. We have a body and we have a mind, and that makes a personality. And then we have likes and we have dislikes, and that brings all the mind and everything. So this abstract sense of I is now joined to something which is concrete. The yogi sees that abstract reality. It is, the yogi also sees the limiting adjuncts, but that is secondary. The primary, you can say, perception of the reality of this yogi is the Atman, the reality, God. So God in everything and everything in God. So what happens is he sees, his primary perception is God dwelling in everything. That's a secondary perception. So this is the state of realization with a special knowledge. So what happens after you realize? You know, Sri Ramakrishna says in one place, he's telling one devotee, what will you get by merely understanding intuitively about the reality, or even seeing visions of God? You must be able to get him indoors and become intimate, start conversing with God. Make God your very own. Visions, etc., has that distinction between I and you. The idea of separateness is there. In this special knowledge, one identifies oneself with God and not with anything else. Because the identity between God and the yogi has been obliterated. There's a distinction has been removed of, the identity remains. That the yogi, in trying to find who am I, and then what does the yogi find? He searches for the I, and he does not find the I. The yogi finds God. You know, there is that quibble. You know, people are saying, who am I? Find out who am I. Make this inquiry, who am I? 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 Even those guys in the lunatic asylum, they also say, who am I? They don't know who they are. So be careful. When you have to take a spiritual inquiry, it takes a form of, the scriptures tell you. If you ask, who am I? The scriptures tell you, oh, that I that you are seeking is actually belongs to God. So in seeking this I, you reach God. And as you are, you love your I. There is nothing better, greater than that. You will do everything for this I. Everything. So that is replaced with you. Now you will do everything for God. You love that God. So deep down there is, and there will be a love for God in its purest form. But we have mistaken this for the I. We love this I. Yeah. Now we know the mistake. The error has been corrected through the practice of yoga. And this is what the Lord says, that one who sees me in everything and sees all things in me. I do not go out of his vision, and he also is not lost to my vision. There is that commingling of. Sri Ramakrishna also gives the example of when you kind of toss a stick on the water and the stick is floating, apparently that water seems divided into two, apparently. And that's what the sense of personal identity does to this reality. It's apparently dividing one side from the other, me and God. Take that stick of ego out, and then what happens is one is, you can say, unified in this. The next verse is Sarvabhuta sthitam yomam bhajate kattvamastitaha sarvata vartamanopi sayogi mai vartate. This is an elaboration of the 30th verse. The 31st is that yogi who, being established in unity, adores me as existing in all things. He exists in me in whatever condition he may be. It's such a wonderful. When we look at people, we judge. When we see things, we judge. And when we judge, oh, this person is like this person is like that. Oh, this yogi is like this and that yogi is like that. Oh, that yogi is sitting in the cave in the mountains, that yogi is in the city, or maybe that yogi is somewhere else, I don't know where, whatever. That yogi is hungry or thirsty, whatever. We are just looking at the externals. The internal is here that yogi is one with the divine. Because the Lord says, that yogi exists in me. So that yogi who being established in unity adores me. And this is what actually happens. That yogi adores the Lord in everything. No longer is that yogi interested in going to the temple, to a particular temple, at a particular time, in a particular place, and a particular date, all those things. That yogi adores, worships, bhajati, that one Lord, all the times, in everything. So whatever be the condition of that yogi is always existent in God. So this is what is called the state of knowledge. Tattva jnana. Knowledge of the reality. Two things have happened. When the yogi keeps on through the practices of yoga, as we have seen through all these various, you can say, stages, comes to this realization, what happens is that knowledge of reality flashes there within the yogi. The mind which was there is, as it were, destroyed. And the contents of the mind are vitiated, or as I say, dissipated. So it's like, okay, you take a packet of mustard seeds, and then you open it, and then mustard seeds fly away in all places. And then what you do with the packet? Oh, the packet is empty. The packet is useless. Because there was a time when the packet contained those mustard seeds. And now that the mustard seeds have gone, what do you do with the packet? Discard it. This is actually what happened. These two things, that the destruction of the mind as well as the destruction of all the impressions that are in the mind. The impressions are called vasana. So these are two called Vasana Kshaya. So what does the form of this realization take place? And the best way, you can say, is to see how Sri Ramakrishna explains it. He says, when the mind is annihilated, when it stops deliberating the pros and cons, then one goes into samadhi, one attains the knowledge of Brahman. This is what happens. He says, when the mind is annihilated. But what about me? You? What are you? What about me? That I was an illusion. It is that I that has created your mind. And the mind has created the life force, and the life force has created the body, and the body has created everything else. You take away this I. How? You go to the very extreme. Completely destroy the mind itself. The receptacle of this I is destroyed. But no, you have to be a little merciless there. But what about me? What about I? Suddenly, you find that this knowledge of reality, the tattva jnana, is so vast and so infinite. This I seems like silly, stupid interruption out there. You give it up. That's a destruction of this I. And then, like Sri Ramakrishna says, because this is a state of vijnana. What happens after realization? So, he says, it is God alone who has become the universe, living beings, and all the 24 cosmic principles. When God is actionless, I call him Brahman. When God creates, preserves, and destroys, I call him Shakti, power. Brahman and Shakti are not different from each other. Water is water, whether it is still or it is moving. Here we have this idea that everything is a combination of Shiva and Shakti, Brahman and Shakti. So it is God who has become the universe and all the living beings. This is the state of vijnana. It says, in one form, God is the absolute, and in another form, God is the relative. And this is now living in Brahman. It is at this stage when you can see, that your identity is completely false, and it's replaced now with the reality of God. This is tattva jnana, knowledge of reality. Right now, we have knowledge. Yeah, you have knowledge which is illusory, because it is based on that illusory I. It is non-knowledge. And when you have this realization, everything is, this universe is nothing but divine, it's God. So, he says, the Vijnani accepts both God with form and the formless, both the personal and the impersonal. So, this Vijnani, because due to the factor of karma, of the body still somehow tenuously maintaining itself, this realization is not dampened by the body, but the body is there as part of this universe, which is that you feel yourself as part of the universe. You see the body as a kind of a shadow. Your own. You become the universe, and this vijnana, the state, is called Jivan Mukti. The liberation, liberated while yet living. Because the body still is functioning in a way. I was saying then, there is another category of yogis who, due to a tremendous form of spiritual disciplines, they reach that stage of realization, and when they descend from it, that mind and the impressions therein have not yet been completely destroyed. That mano nasha and vasana kshaya has not taken place. The packet of mustard seeds, the mustard has been blown away and you discard the packet. That has not yet been done. So what happens is, this second yogi, second type of yogi, that yogi will keep on having that perception of God, and that perception of God will slowly eradicate the mind. And when the yogi accomplishes that, that person becomes the liberated while still alive. In case the yogi does not accomplish that yogi gets a vision, the highest experience, then comes down on this relative plane. The mind is still functioning in a way. What happens is, for that yogi, there is something called a videha mukti, liberation after the fall of the body. I think this is more or less clear. So, the knowledge of reality comes with that tremendous, you can say, illumination. But the body sometimes has a past momentum. And that is what actually keeps the yogi still alive. So as the body keeps on with its momentum, there will come a time when the body will fall, and then the yogi merges in the reality. So that is called videha mukti, liberation after the fall of the body. And there are the higher classes of yogis who, if they, after that realization, the mind is destroyed as well as all the impressions. That's what Sri Ramakrishna says. When the mind is annihilated, when it stops deliberating the pros and cons, that mind is that it deliberates, this or that, sankalpa vikalpatmaka. Then one attains that stage. So, well, as long as the mind, Sri Ramakrishna says, as long as a man has a mind, that mind cannot reach the absolute. So here you have in this realization, but is this realization overshadowed by the functioning of the mind? No, it never can happen. The realization of Brahman, or the absolute, or the all-pervading God is so powerful, there exists a semblance of the mind. And that semblance of the mind kind of brings out a kind of a small veil. And if it is the will of God, that body and mind of this yogi will be used as an instrument for God's work. So these are the different classes of yogis, of what exactly happens after realization. There was somebody who had called me and saying, I have realized everything, now what do I do? So I said, that's an impossible question. It means one thing, you have not realized. Because this question itself is irrelevant. It does not arise at all. What do I do now after realization? Yeah, you don't know. Why are you asking me? But I was speaking about it in a very light-hearted manner and tried to make the person understand where exactly there is the, you can say, the error. People close their eyes, they see a form of the deity here, and they think they have realized it. No, it's not like that. That realization is a tremendous, you can say, experience. It blows away every conception of the world, about yourself, and even about God. It simply blows it off. Because that mind had created all these concepts of God. And when that mind is, as it were, destroyed or held in abeyance, or it's just a kind of a semblance, you come to this realization that is completely different. Sri Ramakrishna says, you get one type of knowledge when you read something. You get another type of knowledge when you hear about that same thing. You get a different type of knowledge when you meditate on that very same thing. And when you realize that thing, all your old concepts are all gone. Your reading, your listening, your meditation, everything is wiped out. It goes beyond all conceptions, realization. And when you're established in that realization, you become a Vijnani, the one with a special knowledge. So what happens after realization? Yeah, you get a special knowledge. This is what kind of special knowledge? That the special knowledge is God exists in all beings and all beings exist in God. That includes oneself also. I remember one time, I was asking about what samadhi is to a Swami of our order. And I was, bookish knowledge. I was trying to explain to that Swami what I understood about this state of samadhi according to what I had read and what I had heard. And he got so annoyed with me. No, it's all right. It doesn't happen like that. Then I understood. Yes, at this stage, that person has that special knowledge which is not found in any book or any kind of limitations. That knowledge is a standalone, it's a special. Sri Ramakrishna gives the example of some people have heard of milk, some people have read about milk, some people have seen milk. Those who have seen milk, yes, they are better. They are the jnanis, the people of knowledge. And those who have seen milk, taken that milk and drunk that milk, they are the vijnanis. For them, that milk has become one with them. You know, if any food becomes one with the body. It was different, and now it has become one with it. So it's assimilation. So this knowledge, special knowledge, becomes one with. The person becomes one with that special knowledge. And what is the special knowledge? Special knowledge is special knowledge of God. This has to be. What's the person with? What's so special about that person? That the speciality is that person knows God in his, you can say, entirety. So Sri Ramakrishna says, as long as you reason with your mind, you have no way of getting rid of the universe and the objects of the senses, form, touch, taste, smell, etc. When reasoning stops, you attain the knowledge of Brahman. Atman cannot be realized through the mind. So the mind has to be, as I say, the ordinary mind has to be destroyed. Mano nash. The Atman is realized through the Atman alone. All these are one and the same. The pure mind, the pure Atman, the pure intelligence and everything. So what happens is the Atman is realized through the Atman alone. The Atman realizes the Paramatman. One realizes God. And then what happens? One merges into it. So this is what actually happens when one realizes God. That yogi, to read the verse again, who, being established in unity, adores me as existing in all things, that yogi exists in me in whatever condition that yogi may be in. He's sleeping, he's dreaming, he's eating, he's walking, he's talking. His adoration of the divine is constant. Why? Because he's seeing the unity, he's saying everything is God. Sri Ramakrishna, as he was performing worship, he has the vision of everything as consciousness. The floor, the door sill, the walls, the image, and everything as consciousness. And he's saying, like a madman, I took flowers and started throwing it everywhere. He should have thrown it at the feet of Mother Kali, you're worshipping Kali. He sees that consciousness everywhere. So this is what happened here. That yogi worships God everywhere, in whatever condition that yogi is in. Because saying that yogi is established in unity. And this is what happens. So what happens is, the person keeps on worshipping God. It's, why after all this thing? Oh yeah. So there is a vertical, you can say, realization. And then there is a horizontal realizations. Swami Brahmananda says, real religion commences after Nirvikalpa Samadhi. What? We thought that that was the culmination, that was the end. How can it be? You have spent lifetimes for this goal and you have attained that goal of Nirvikalpa Samadhi, and now you are telling me that real religion begins now? What's that? Yes, the real religion, the real worship, the real adoration of God begins now, after the realization of God. Now we are just, like children, making sand castles, building sand castles on the seashore. We're trying, we're kind of a simulation of the real thing. But then that becomes the real thing, that adoration. The 32nd verse is, yes. Atmaupam yena sarvatra samam pashyati yorjuna sukham va yadiva dukkham sayogi paramo mataha. Atmaupam yena sarvatra. O Arjuna, that yogi is considered the best, who sees what is happiness and sorrow in all beings by the same standard as he would apply to himself, to oneself. Upama is comparison. Aupamya is the abstract form of that comparison. So to be, as it were, the standard. What? Of the whole world. You judge everybody like you see yourself. The way you see yourself. What has happened is, this is one of the indications of the living while free, the liberated in life. Because that yogi does not see any difference between oneself and everything else, he or she will treat everybody as their own self. Because as long as the body is functioning, so what happens? So if you see a yogi not behaving with others the way he holds a high opinion of himself and doesn't hold a high opinion of others, that yogi has got a lot of deficiencies. So everybody are equal in the yogi's eyes. And he will behave exactly with others the way he will behave with himself. If he knows this is painful, everybody feels pain like this. If he knows this makes me happy, everybody becomes happy like this. So there is no unnecessary deliberation. Is this person, you can say, happy if this is done, or is it painful if that is not done? No. Since he sees everything as one, he sees everything as his own self. This is what Sukham va yadiva dukkham sayogi param. That is the highest yogi, is considered the best, who sees everything and behaves like, yeah, they are also me. So no longer is the yogi separate from everything else. Birds, animal, plants, the whole universe becomes the yogi's self. So the yogi behaves exactly, the yogi will see himself or herself reflected everywhere. Actually, the yogi will see oneself in others. So is it possible? Oh my God. Sri Ramakrishna one time said there were two boatmen quarreling on the river Ganga, which was just adjacent to where Sri Ramakrishna lived. And they were quarreling, and the quarrel became more violent, and one boatman hit the other. And then he hit and Sri Ramakrishna felt the pain and said, oh! And actually there were those marks of that blow on Sri Ramakrishna. And Hriday said, who was it? Who struck you? No, nobody has struck me. Those two guys were fighting out there. What? Another time, another person was walking on the grass. And Sri Ramakrishna says, tell that guy not to walk on the grass. He's as if he's walking over me. This is the state of realization, the knowledge, the Vijnani, the one who is free while still alive. The body is functioning as it keeps on functioning. This is what the yogi actually sees, experiences. So he's saying that yogi is considered the best who sees, pashyati, what is happiness and sorrow in all beings by the same standard as one would apply to oneself. So this is the state of realization, the special state of realization after realization. What happens after realization is this. There's the constant worship, there's the constant realization, there's the constant bliss, there's constant, you can say, perception of God. Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Tat Sat Shri Ram Krishna Arpanamastu. We have an announcement, that is, we have annual general meeting of the Vedanta Society of Southern California members on Saturday morning at 10 o'clock. We also have the Hanuman Jayanti, which will be celebrated in the evening. On Sunday, we have Swami Arupeshananda giving a talk. So on Saturday, we won't have this meditation class. We will meet again for members Saturday morning, and for everyone else Saturday evening, afternoon. Check out our listing. Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Tat Sat Shri Ram Krishna Arpanamastu.